I read a book. I don't remember when, but the storyline was this guy kept getting abducted. And he would find himself on some sort of alien ship or a different planet. But every time it was the same scenario being played out whenever he would get abducted. And it wasn't very clear cut as to what exactly these beings wanted him for. He was kind of prodded and pushed to perform certain sort of actions while he was there, but he didn't quite get why they were doing it. And it turned out that it ended up being some sort of show, it was either a show or a zoo, which are the same thing, but. And I know there have been other. I think Kurt Vonnegut wrote a book. I forget what it's called, but he wrote a book about a guy and a girl were abducted from Earth. They ended up on an alien ship, and then the aliens blew up Earth. And then him and the girl were gonna spend the rest of their time as specimens for these guys to examine for whatever purpose. And the theme of sticking creatures inside of cages for other creatures' amusement or entertainment or simple use, farming, that seems to be a common motif of this realm, is to take creatures and stick them somewhere and then sort of do things that if they had a voice to speak out against it, they probably would say no thank you. But some of them don't have voices to speak out, like animals in slaughterhouses, for instance. They don't have the voice to speak out about it, and they don't have and they wouldn't be listened to anyway, most likely. Maybe they would. I don't know. And then you have movies like The Truman Show. And then you have actors within movies like The Truman Show that go and do a real life sort of copycat of the show itself. Jim Carrey was in a decent few sort of philosophical themed movies, like Truman Show was one of them. Bruce Almighty was another one. These are films that are taking very intriguing looks into what the human is, what the deities are, what the powers that exist in this universe or this realm are, who has them, and the lines between, or the delineations between categories of beings, and if those things can be crisscrossed, or if they're set in stone. Generally speaking, you are told that your role is set. Although they can't tell you what it is, they just give you the system gives you 3 options, and none of them appeal, but you gotta choose one of the 3. I've also heard the term terrarium to describe the realm, and I didn't look up what exactly that meant, but it sounded like I don't know what it sounded like. I mean, it sounded like, you know, a box with some nice soil in there, some plants, a little bit of running water maybe, and some creatures in the cage. But it's always going back to the cage. it's the cage is the fundamental, or the construct. Cage, construct, same thing. It's the fundamental base essence of what we have going on here. And I don't know so much about the farm aspect, farming loosh, or energy extraction matrix, stuff like that. I'm not so much sold on that as a practicality aspect of the realm. Because when I look around, it does not seem like you've heard of the theory that when God decided to make the universe, he's like, all right, we need a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You know, we need to be the people to be yay high, and we only need this certain amount of species on the thing, and let's put a little bit of water here, and, you know, put some energy vortexes over there. Let's make it mostly sort of good, but let's also throw some evil fuckers in there, and let's make everything very confusing, but still work flawlessly at the same time. As far as does the mechanism work? He's like, okay, fix that, this is going well. Let's put a couple seeds here, some human seed pods. Let's put some chicken seed pods. Those silly guys are gonna wonder forever which ones came first. Chicken, egg, baby, mother. They'll never ever figure it out. But then he's like, finally, okay, well, I figured it out. It looks about how I want it. And he pressed the start button, and then the whole thing starts grumbling and grinding to life, and there it is. And God's like, that was fun. Peace. And he's just like, he's just out. You know, he's off doing other things, creating other silly terrariums. Like a set and forget, you know? It's like, you hear about manifesting and how to actually kind of get your desires, or, you know, if you're a Buddhist and you don't like going after desires, well, getting things done maybe, because even as a Buddhist you still have to get things done. Say you gotta mow your lawn, and even though you're a good Buddhist monk with lots of discipline, you don't want to mow your lawn, so you do a manifest. You set an intention. The lawn needs to get mowed, and I'm the one to do it. maybe write a note, maybe tie a string around your finger, and then forget that you did it, and then it goes on autopilot from that point on. And whether the thing happens or not is irrelevant, because you're not attached to outcomes, remember? And that also increases the likelihood of the thing to happen as necessary, because it always happens as necessary whether you do anything about it or not. That's one of the things that kind of goes in the face of free will, or the idea of free will. But back to the terrarium idea. There is a different intelligence that is keeping the order here. Different intelligence from my intelligence. My intelligence is not the same as that which keeps these things in place, as far as hierarchy and social values, things like that, where somebody ought to be, where their physical body ought to be here on the plane at any given moment. All of the value structures that determine who, where, what, when, how, and why, they are a different intelligence than mine, and other people as well. It is intelligently put together after a fashion, but it's very fraught. Is that a word? Fraught with automaticity. I think fraught is a word. I don't know. But it's automatic. And every time you go and try to talk to an intelligent mover within this system, you don't find somebody who understands the whole thing, or at least a decent bit of it, a decent portion. You get people that are specialized, and they understand the 3 things they learned in school that don't apply to their current job. Well, after they learned those 3 useless things, they went to their job and they learned 3 practical things that actually help them do that job. And when you ask them a question, they look at that list of 3 items. And if your question doesn't apply to those 3 items, then you're shit out of luck, and they don't know what to do with you. And that just seems to be how... I know I overgeneralize everything, but overgeneralizing is very fun. And it's not just overgeneralization, it's my active participation in the realm and my actual experience. If you think of what is meant by the term sovereign, even though I don't like that terminology, I don't really apply it to myself, I don't really apply any terminology to myself, but if you think of what that means, it means that this individual is they're a they're a wholeness as represented in an individual being. They're a wholeness. And those ones that are firmly rooted within the hierarchical machine system that we have running here, that seems to be nearly fully automatic, and even when people are placed within roles within companies, they have very specific paths that they can take throughout their day while they're going about their practical business. They have certain ways that they're allowed to move, and if they move outside of those ways, then the boss will yell at you. And if you think outside of the boss, then he'll yell at you, or she'll yell at you. And if you point out some sort of flaw in their perceived flaw in their behavior, they will yell at you, because you're not supposed to do that, because rules and stuff. And the machine perpetuates itself. Now, I don't mind it. It's not threatening or something. It's just boring. Like, go listen to Terrence McKenna for 2 hours and then try and go back and stick yourself inside of your 5 to 9 and see if you're able to do it. So back to the interdimensional terrarium idea. I feel the presence of an intelligence here, and it may be a biotechno AI sort of a thing, possibly, because I can feel within the movements of tech, of the iPhone, of the Mac computer, the user interface has adapted itself in ways that utilizes and understands my thought forms that are predicting out what movements I want to do on the computer or the cell phone. It started off with predictive text, but it became more intelligent after that. The whole setup, it rearranged itself as per my wants or my needs, without asking me, like, directly, should I ought to do this or not. It did it anyway, and it's helpful. That part is helpful. And it's like that intelligence is here as well, in addition to all the sleeping humans, or the all the I don't know what to call them without being mean, but the ones that do the same exact thing and seem to have the same thought loop running inside of their head. I listened to a bit of Terrence McKenna last night, and he was talking about the scientific method and whether that sort of 4 or 5 step verification of truth process is legit. Because the whole premise is based on being able to repeat experiments numerous times while having a constant within the experiment. If there isn't a constant, then there's no experiment. And then McKenna went on to say that Heraclitus, I think that was his name, one of these old philosopher dudes, Heraclitus, or it was Plato, I don't remember. One of these old guys said, you never step into the same river twice, ever. And that goes back to what I say, which is we're incapable of repetition. Which also McKenna said that he went on to say that perhaps what science is doing with its scientific methodology of organizing the realm into some sort of a cohesive, logical whole picture. What they're actually doing is they're taking the most gross movements of the realm, the basest, like elephants running through a forest, kind of knocking over trees and like ripping out saplings and, destroying like everything in their path. It's like scientists are capable of organizing information that is at such a gross or a base level that it appears to be repeating. It appears to be repeating. And then it's not even. So even at that level, it's still a pretend, so to speak. Although, since at that level it appears to be repeating, then it looks like we have something going on here, but we really still don't, because nothing ever repeats ever, and it never, ever has. So, in essence, scientists are making subjective value judgments on their perceptive experience, and then they're printing it out into the paper, or printing it out into the 3D universe as truth. And as if there is a certain way things need to be gone about. And then you have the men with guns and things to back up, or to physically force anybody who would draw outside the lines of that scientifically determined box, and they will disallow your movement based on the premise that the scientism, the religion of scientists, is correct. And to assume that the religion of science is correct is a leap of faith, right? You gotta have faith to believe science. Back to the terrarium, it makes much more sense that this is a zoo of sorts, or some sort of Rick and Morty episode, where, we put on a VR headset and pop into existence here, have some sort of an odd life that doesn't make any sense. And we're not, there was an episode where, I've talked about it before. Morty put on a VR headset and became like an average Joe, and with a wife, kids, and a mortgage, and a job, selling carpet, and he was unhappy and all that. And then he woke up and Rick's like, you got a 25, you suck. And it took Morty 2 seconds to remember what was going on, and he's like, haha, and that kind of like, how Morty laughs. He's always kind of nervous because he's one half of Rick and Morty, and they do insane things all the time. Jump through black holes and jump through portals all the time. But it makes more sense that this place is something like that. It's some sort of game show for aliens. The game show for aliens thing, I think, is very plausible because of the lack of human intelligence at the head of the beast machine that appears to be running the mechanisms of the place. The lack of human intelligence. And there's plenty of reason for me to see I'm always searching for different words besides truth. It seems plausible is a better word, that if it's a show for Interdimensionals, they're putting on a show for their buddies with Earthlings, as the stars, then it wouldn't make any sense to the Earthlings, because especially if the Earthlings were abducted from their original place and stuck into, say, like an aquarium where, as humans, we try to reproduce their natural environment, and the fish are probably feeling like how we're feeling here, where it's like, yeah, I'm in water, and I have stuff to eat, and I have a couple friends. There's some seaweed here and there's some rocks, and I feel kind of like I'm where I'm supposed to be, but the place feels kind of claustrophobic, and I just kind of, in the very deepest recesses of my mind, I just kind of remember something that seemed more like home. It's because as fish farmers, or as the zookeepers of our fish, we try to reproduce their natural environment, and we do it with decent intent, aside from the fact that we're enslaving them for our own entertainment. We're not sitting there just trying to torture them. That's not the goal, as far as I know, of people holding fish in their fish tanks. But we're, from the fish's perspective, this fish has nuanced connections to its natural environment, right? And as soon as you take that fish out of the natural environment and you plop it in a clear box full of treated water so the thing won't die in there, trying to get the acid, the pH levels correct, to us, with our very sort of dumbassery conceptions of what fish need, if the fish doesn't die, we did a fantastic and a splendid job. And that fish is probably in heaven because, he's got free food. But from the fish's perspective, he's probably like, what the fuck is going on here? So that would make a whole lot of sense to me if we were snatched up by some sort of interdimensional that wanted to just like stick us in a zoo or something. Not even necessarily for energy farming, although that's a possibility. Just like, I don't know, it's some sort of experiment. And they tried to reproduce, the Earthlings, they know their world looks like this, and they have some landscapes, and they like having people around them, and they really like progress and success, so let's just make the whole thing about that. And how do we do that? Oh yeah, the humans, they like this thing called business, and they like feeling better than each other. So let's just make the system where every single person has an opportunity to feel better than the other one, and that's probably what they like. They love it. They love competition. They love competing in every single second of their lives, so they can feel worthy to eat and to have a sleep on a bed and to have a roof over their heads and all that stuff. So maybe an alien being would pluck us from our natural environment and try to reproduce the elements and have about as much success in making this transplanted being happy as we have in making our fish in our fish tanks happy. I don't know, what do you think?